Hello everyone and welcome back to part 2 of Puppy School Q&A. This time we are going to be talking about the topic of Pica, so the ingestion or the eating of non-edible items. So the first thing that's really important to do is to differentiate between Pica, which is the abnormal ingestion, so swallowing of items, versus just the general sort of normal exploratory behaviour that we see in puppies, where they will chew on items and obviously sometimes accidentally ingest little bits. So when we're talking about true Pica, like I say, we're talking about a consumption, so wanting to swallow these items. It tends to be something that happens on a regular basis. It can be one specific thing or it can be multiple different types of items, but it's lots and lots of non-edible items. So you tend to find that dogs will do it with things like socks, plastic items, rubber items, things like that. So when we have a dog that's showing that behaviour, we do need to make sure that we're getting a vet check, because there can be medical reasons why that behaviour might be occurring. And again, there could be a nutritional component as well, so we need to consider nutrition deficits and things like that. It can be a compulsive disorder. So the things that would indicate that it's a compulsion or a compulsive behaviour would be that the dog is doing it first of all when the owner isn't present, so it's happening at all times of the day and it's not just when the owner is there. It's very, very difficult to get them to come away from that behaviour and to get them to disengage from that behaviour. There's, like I say, it's a compulsion. They absolutely feel like they have to do this behaviour. It can be when you do distract them away, or if you can distract them away, they want to go back to that behaviour straight away. It's very difficult to keep them away from it. And in some cases, they can become very aggressive if you try and restrain them from that behaviour. So in those cases, when it's definitely a Pica, and particularly if we think it's a compulsive disorder, we definitely need to get a behaviorist involved, who will be working in conjunction with a vet in a lot of cases, because in some cases medication is required to help resolve that issue. Based on the information that we've had and the questions that we've had, I suspect that what we are mostly dealing with in these cases is not a Pica as such, in terms of a compulsive disorder or a constant ingestion, but actually we've started off with a puppy that's just been engaging in normal exploratory chewing, and it has developed from there. So I just want to talk a little bit about how some of these behaviours can develop, and then what we'll do is we'll go into the questions, the remainder of the questions that we had from everybody on Facebook this week. So when we're looking at chewing, obviously there's, again, lots of reasons why dogs chew. It's never simple, any of this stuff. There's no one word answer for any of these things. Dogs do behaviours for lots of different reasons, and we always have to consider why. That's a really important question to ask. So when dogs chew, it's usually going to be one of a number of things. If they're sort of at teething age, so teething occurs around 16 weeks of age, so their baby teeth start to drop and they get their adult teeth starting to come through. So obviously their gums hurt, they need to relieve that pressure, so they might chew on things just to help them feel a little bit better. They do go through an adolescent chewing phase as well, so that usually occurs between 7 to 10 months of age, obviously depends on the dog. So they do go through another stage of wanting to chew items around that stage as well. Puppies might chew because they're hungry, because they're hungry, so their body is driving them to seek food items, so they might start to chew items in that situation. And again, boredom, stress, those sorts of things can lead to these behaviours. But with exploratory chewing, what we've got to remember is that this is very, very normal. The way puppies explore their world is through putting things in their mouth, chewing them around, and then generally they'll just spit them back out again. It's very, very rare that they will actually swallow those items. Puppies don't have opposable thumbs, so whereas with humans, when we are babies, the way we explore our environment is we will hold things in our hands and start playing around with them, and that's how, as humans, we explore our environment. Puppies explore using their mouths, so that's how they explore their environment. So what tends to happen when puppies are little is they will put something in their mouth and they'll just be generally exploring it, and a couple of different things can happen in that situation. So if they put something in their mouth and it it either tastes really good or the texture's really satisfying. So wood items tend to be really satisfying for puppies because they can really crunch on them. What can happen is that they start to learn that these particular items are really, really, really good to chew on. And then we can end up with a puppy that essentially starts to form a habit and starts to chew on those items on a regular basis. So if we aren't giving our puppies appropriate items to chew from a very young age, they will learn to chew inappropriate items. And this leads to puppies that chew things like table legs, the skirting boards, and all sorts of other weird and wonderful bits and bobs. It's really frustrating because a lot of chews that are available on the market will say not suitable for puppies under 4 months of age. And unfortunately at that stage, that's when they're hitting their teething stage. So if they haven't been given opportunity to learn which items are appropriate to chew, and they haven't been given really decent chew items from a very young age, they don't have that prior learning to understand that there are certain things that are okay to chew and we find acceptable. So it's really, really important to make sure we're providing our puppies from a very, very young age acceptable chew items. And that means not just those little Nylabone chews that everybody buys from Pets at Home, the little pack of 3. Not always the most exciting things for puppies, unfortunately. So they tend to find things that are a little bit more exciting. So the other thing we need to think about is items aren't just valuable to chew because of how the texture. They can also become valuable to chew because of the attention they get. So if a puppy picks up an item, let's say a kid's toy that's on the floor, and just decides to explore it, it just puts it in its mouth, sees what it's all about. And all of a sudden everybody in the room goes, "Oh no, you mustn't have that. Oh, get away from that." Puppies can very quickly learn, oh, okay, putting this item in my mouth is a really good way to get attention. So putting items in their mouth and starting to chew can become a little bit of an attention-seeking behaviour. And this is particularly it's more likely to happen in situations where a puppy perhaps is a little bit bored, is perhaps not getting as much physical exercise or mental stimulation as it needs. So something to think about at the moment with the lockdown is the fact that puppies or some dogs will be getting less than what they need, just because of the way that life is at the moment. We can't provide appropriate stimulation necessarily all the time, or they might be lacking what they need. So we might be seeing an increase in these behaviours just because they're bored and they're looking for something to do. So in that case, what we can end up with is a puppy that starts to pick up items and either chew them or starts to initiate a little chase game. So we pick up the item and we know that that means that everybody's going to start going, "Oh no," and try and get it off us. And that's a really good way to start initiating a really fun chase game where everyone runs around after me. Brilliant fun for a little puppy. The other problem that can develop from that, however, is we can end up with puppies that start to when they've got hold of an item and they don't want to give it up because it's really fun, it becomes this is the only way that I can get some really good fun, so I'm going to try and keep hold of this item. So when we try and take it off them, they can start to guard the item and want to try and keep it away from us. Now, Louise, my puppy school colleague, did an amazing video last week, which I'm really going to encourage everybody to watch because it looks at a lot of different body language and signs that puppies are a little bit uncomfortable. And what I often find is that the signs on the lower end of the scale are often missed. So when puppy just very quietly freezes over an item or just gently turns their head away, that's usually a little sign that they don't really want to give that item up. But what we tend to do as owners is we ignore those behaviours and we just say, oh, and we just take it out of the puppy's mouth. So puppy takes hold of something they're not supposed to have. They try and keep hold of it. The owner comes along, just goes, "Oh, give it to me," takes it out of their mouth. The puppy's tried to keep hold of it, has given off those lower level signs that they're a little bit unsure and a little bit stressed, but those signs have been ignored and the owner takes the item away. What can happen over time is the puppy can then start to eat one of two things. Either they can start to guard that item more aggressively. So Louise talked about the ladder of aggression last week. So we start to see behaviours a little bit higher up that ladder of aggression. So we start to see things like growling, maybe a little air snap, behaviours like that. The other thing that can happen is we end up with a puppy that says, "Oh, this item's going to get taken away from me." So when the owner tries to take it, they swallow it to get rid of it as quickly as possible. And that's when we can end up with puppies that start to ingest items. And it's not necessarily true Pica, but it's because they are worried that the item's going to get taken off them. So that's the other thing that we just need to be mindful of as well when we're looking at these behaviours. Have our responses led to the behaviour of ingesting the items? So when we're looking at this sort of eating things like sticks, stones, toys, just picking up anything off the floor or when we're out and about, we do need to look at nutrition again. So particularly for things like grass and soil, if a puppy is sort of eating a lot of that, that could indicate that we've got a little bit of a nutritional deficiency. I talked about it in the previous video with regards to coprophagia. It is important to just make sure we've got a puppy on a nutritious diet and that they are digesting that diet appropriately. So have a little look at that. We do need to supervise and manage these behaviours, so we need to make sure that we are putting in appropriate management, preventing them from practising the behaviour in the first place if we can. I admit that's not always practical, but it's the best way to prevent these behaviours from becoming a habit. And then once we've started looking at that, we then need to make sure that we are providing them with appropriate chew items, so things that we want them to chew on. If they haven't got lots of appropriate items, then they will chew things that they know just either feel good because they feel good to chew, or they feel good because they get lots of attention. The other thing to do with that is to make sure that we are praising them when they are chewing the appropriate items, because if we give them chew items that we like and we just ignore them when they chew those, but then they chew things like the skirting board and we go, no, you mustn't pay attention, you mustn't do that, they're learning that actually chewing the items that we think are appropriate, that's actually quite boring for them. So they do need to get reinforced or rewarded for chewing the correct items. And the last little thing, which I talked about with the coprophagia video earlier, is teaching a really solid leave or drop cue. Really reliable. Because if we know that they're either moving towards an item that we don't want them to have, we can ask them to leave and then we can reward them for coming away. Or if they pick up something that we don't want them to have, we can ask them to drop, and when they drop it, we can reward them for dropping it. So there are a few little things to think about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the questions on Facebook from everybody with regards to having hold of items like sticks and stones and things like that, and just go through each one of your individual questions just to see if we've got any additional advice that might help you. So the first question was from Alison Bush. She says, my puppy loves to pick up and chew the gravel, stones or even lumps of mud. I generally get to him before he swallows, but not always. Would love to know if there's anything we can do to stop this before he ends up with an obstruction. So what I would say there, Alison, is would you say that when you move towards him, does that make him want to swallow it? And if that's the case, that could be a little sign that we've got a puppy that's just learning, when you come near me, you're going to take things away from me. So it might be worthwhile looking at teaching a really, really good drop cue and teaching puppies so that you don't have to go near them to take it off them. You can just, from a distance, say drop and they spit it out. So that would be the first thing, is making sure we've got a really good drop cue in place. And that might be something to speak to your local puppy school tutor about, to make sure you've got a really reliable drop cue. The other thing is, because we're going for things like, so we've got mud in there, so I would definitely have a little look at nutrition, just make sure that we're on a balanced diet, to make sure that we're not seeking additional nutrients from the mud. And things like gravel and stones, so have we got things that we are able to really have a good chew on, so hard items. So have we got a good provision of appropriate chew items for your puppy to make sure that they're more likely to chew those and less likely to chew the gravel and stones. So those would be the first things that I'd be looking at there. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Gemma Bicknell says, my puppy used to pick up stones all the time when she was young, but she stopped doing it fairly early on. She's 11 months now and has just started to do it again. She's never swallowed any. She will sometimes drop them when I ask her to, but sometimes she thinks it's a game and she runs around, which I ignore and walk into the house, and then generally she drops it and follows me. I'm not sure why she started doing it again. Is it because she's becoming a teenager? Brilliant question. And Gemma, absolutely perfect response. So making sure that you've taught her a good drop cue, and if she starts playing a game, you just disengage and you walk away from her. Absolutely spot on. So the fact that it's re-emerged at 11 months could be something to do with the fact that we've started to get some additional exploratory chewing, or that adolescent chewing. Could be something to do with that. The other thing that it might be, and I talked about this in the coprophagia video, we've had a big change of routine recently with a lockdown. So I don't know about your individual circumstances, but if there's been a big change in routine recently, stress levels could be a little bit higher, both for family members, but also for your dog as well. So that might be a reason why that behaviour has just re-emerged again. So certainly something to just consider. Just what I would suggest is, you obviously did a really good job of preventing the behaviour before, so just go back to doing what you were doing before, preventing access, again, carrying on with your drop cue, and just disengaging if she tries to make it into a game. Absolutely perfect. Really nicely done. So, next question. Sinead Loader asks, our 6-month Sprocker keeps pinching non-food items from the table and running off to crunch them up, especially pens now the kids are homeschooling. She's never had access to food there, but loves anything she can grab. Paper, pens, rulers, tissues, remote control. We usually try to get them from her before she eats them, but really trying hard not to make it an exciting chase me game. Any advice how to redirect would be great, as not practical to completely remove everything from reach all the time to avoid the behaviour. So yeah, absolutely. We've got a change in routine, which means that we've got more access to these things, because I'm guessing the kids' pens weren't always there before. So again, trying not to engage in the chase me game. Well done, that's absolutely the right thing to be doing. But it does sound like you are still trying to get those things off her. So I wonder if we just need to make sure that we're not engaging in that sort of activity, and sort of showing her that actually we don't get that attention at all. You say that it's really, really difficult to prevent access. I wonder if you have a way of being able to teach her to go to a specific place to sit while the kids are doing their homeschooling. So she's got somewhere special to settle. So whether she's got a specific bed area or even a little playpen set up. Just somewhere where it means that she can't practice that behaviour, because like you say, you can't put all the pens and stuff away while the kids are doing their work. So we probably need to look at managing her in a slightly different way. So rather than putting the items away, are we able to pop her away somewhere and give her something appropriate to do? So that's the other thing, is making sure she's got access to things that she can chew. That would be definitely the most important thing. So I think with her, it would definitely be either behind a baby gate or a playpen, or on a bed, asking her to settle, giving her something appropriate to chew, like a little, I don't know, like a Yaker milk chew, or a coffee wood chew, or something that she can really crunch on. And teaching her a good drop cue as well would be a really, really useful thing to teach, so that you're not having to go towards her to grab hold of things. That would be really, really good. So we've got another question from Hannah Tivey. She says, this is a real problem for us at the moment. We have a 9-month-old Cavapoo. He's into everything, small stones, bark, twigs from the garden, as well as any toys in the house the children leave out. We're really trying to prevent it in the house by not leaving anything accessible, a challenge as we have 3 kids aged 6 and under, but we know this is our part to play, but finding it really hard to prevent him picking up things in the garden now the weather is improving and we are in the garden more. So yeah, lovely Hannah, that you're acknowledging that obviously that is quite a difficult thing to accept a puppy to do, is, you know, if things are out there, it is challenging for the puppy to have that self-control. So yeah, you can prevent by just, you know, putting those things away, or you can prevent by having the puppy separate to those things. So what I would say with regards to the being in the garden, I wonder, is there a way that you can separate a portion of the garden to make sure that it is it's dog friendly, and then you've got a kid friendly side of the garden? Just thinking about ways that you can maybe just separate those two things a little bit, to make it a little bit easier for you. Or having puppy on lead when you're out in the garden and supervising that way. That might be a way to do it. You do mention that as well as toys, we've got small stones, bark and twigs. So again, the other little thing I would just look at, especially with things like bark and twigs, make sure we're looking at nutrition, make sure we're looking at diet, and we're on a good diet, that's a balanced diet, so that we haven't got a puppy that's trying to seek additional nutrients in any way. And again, just trying to make sure that we're not paying attention, and if he is picking up small stones, that we're not making it into a big deal. We're not going, oh my gosh, going towards and trying to take them off. And again, like with everybody else, teaching a really good drop cue would be a really, really good thing for those times when they do pick up something. Right, we've got they're all very similar. You will notice there's a pattern to the advice that happens. So our Amy Balderson, our puppy, is nearly 10 months old, and he eats all sorts of things when he's out in the garden. He mainly chews and eats stones, leaves and anything else he finds lying around outside. No idea how to stop him from doing that. He is also constantly digging holes in the garden. Any ideas how to stop this? He eats all his food and any treats fine. Vet says he's healthy and the right weight, etc. So any suggestions would be great. So the same advice as before. It's really going to be about preventing access to those items as best you can, whether that is by having puppy on lead or having a separate area or picking up items before you go out there. Making sure that we're not paying attention when we are doing that behaviour in a way that's going to make him want to swallow those items or to eat those items. Teaching a good drop cue again. The fact that he's constantly digging holes in the garden, that does suggest to me that there is a little bit of a boredom element there. So certainly in that case, I would be making sure that we've probably got a little bit more maybe physical exercise or mental stimulation, just making sure we've got the right amount of activities going on for your puppy. We've got a 10-month-old, so we're probably quite active at the moment, certainly going to be more active than we were when we were a young puppy. So that's really important to look at as well. The vet says he's healthy and the right weight, so that's good. Presumably you've had a vet check. They may not have done any specific tests though, so that is always something to be mindful of. If the vet hasn't done any specific tests, we can't rule out any sort of gastric issues or anything like that. It's just something to be mindful of, and also nutrition as well. Say he eats all his food and any treats fine. How nutritious is the food that he is on? So just having a little look at that as well. So another little question, Carol writes, so this is one of our puppy school tutors. She has a 10-week-old German Shepherd puppy doing the puppy school course. The puppy eats stones whilst in the garden, so she has suggested that they fenced off the area. The puppy is now chewing the plastic fencing. She suggested lots of enrichment activities, so filling a Kong, different types of chews, find it games, different ways of giving the food, root chews, because this puppy, it's chewing furniture cushions and the underside of the sofa. We've talked about diet, and owners have now changed puppy to a high protein kibble. Puppy is underweight but not enthusiastic about its food, although it likes high value treats. Any other ideas on preventing stopping it eating stones and furniture? So you've given a lot of really good advice there, Carol. The thing you haven't mentioned is if that puppy has had a vet check. The fact that puppy is underweight is something I just maybe want to have checked out given what's going on, and the fact that it's not enthusiastic about its food. Again, if it's on a high protein kibble, that might not be the right diet for that dog. It might just be that it needs to be on something like either a different protein type or just that particular diet isn't working for that dog. I wonder if that's worth a check with the vets, just to see if there's anything going on there that's causing the dog to remain underweight, which in turn could then be causing it to want to chew, because it could just be very hungry and just could be wanting to be destructive and want to chew and ingest things. So that would be the first thing I would check, Carol, if you haven't done already. So we've got a few more. Katie Morgan, we have a 10-month-old show cocker spaniel who loves to eat chew or eat twigs and branches. When out on walks, he'll frequently pick them up, often stopping to lie down and chew them. He has even stopped in the middle of the road to do it. We ask him to leave it, but he's increasingly ignoring us. Any advice to stop this would be gratefully appreciated. Thank you. So if we are starting to ignore the leave it cue, what that says to me is that puppy has learned that leave it means, so when we teach this behaviour, if we only teach it in the context of leave it means I'm going to take it off you, puppies learn very quickly, well, if leave it means you're going to take it away from me and I don't get access to it, then why would I leave it? That's not rewarding. So we need to make sure that we are making the leave it cue a rewarding experience for the puppy. So it might be worthwhile doing a little bit more training with that. It sounds like the training has gone a little bit backwards. So we just need to make it a little bit more of a rewarding experience. So teaching the puppy that when you leave something, you get something in return, and you maybe also get that item back. So practicing with items that they are allowed to have. So in puppy school, we teach this an exercise called the hands come to give, not to take, where they are given a chew item. They're asked to come away from that chew item. We reward them for coming away from the chew item, and then they get the chew item back again. So what they learn is when people come near them and take things off them, they actually get them back again. So they don't need to protect those items. They don't need to ignore us when we are asking them to leave things or anything like that. So the fact that we're stopping down to lie and chew in the middle of the road says that we do really want to chew on these things. So the other thing I'd just be looking at is, have we got access to appropriate chew items that we are allowed to chew? The fact that he so desperately wants to chew things on the walk, has he got access to chew items when he's at home? Or is that the only access that he has to those items? And the other thing, if he's stopping to lie down and chew, my dog does that when she's getting tired. So I don't know how much you're walking your dog or anything like that, but it might be worthwhile just looking at the length of your walks and just making sure that you're not over walking your dog and they're not getting tired and just saying, I just need a little bit of a break, just need to stop and lie down. So just a few things to think about there, along with obviously all the other advice that I've been given as well. We're nearly at the end. We've got a few more. So Alice, I have a 14-week-old blue merle puppy, and her favourite things outside to try and eat pebbles, stones or clumps of grass. Inside she likes to steal slippers and take them to her bed to chew on. Any tips appreciated. She has plenty of toys, Kong, rope toys, tennis balls, but stones, grass and slippers seem to be better. So along with all the advice I've given, which is the same to everybody else, if we've got puppies that have access to items which are appropriate, but they choose the items that we deem inappropriate, quite often what that means is that there's some sort of reward for going for the inappropriate items. So it might be that the items that she's going for, the texture is just more satisfying to her. So if that's the case, do we need to provide her with items that have a similar texture? So obviously slippers, so have we got access to nice soft things that she can really sink her teeth into? Stones, have we got access to really hard things that she can really sort of crunch on? So things like maybe a deer antler or something like that. The other thing is just how do you respond when she eats or when she chews the inappropriate items? So if she goes for the items that you don't want, are we paying attention to that? When she's playing with the items that you do want her to play with, are we paying attention or are we ignoring that? Because what I often find is the case is when they're playing with items that we like, we just go, oh, brilliant, they're doing the right thing, and we just ignore them. When they're doing the things that we don't want them to do, that's when we pay attention. So puppies learn there are certain items that get us to pay attention, and there are certain items which are actually very boring to interact with. So I suspect there might be a situation there where we just need to make sure that playing with the Kong, the rope toys, the tennis balls is a lot more fun for her and a lot more engaging with you, whereas stones, grass and slippers, those things are a lot less engaging. So, a few more. Linda says so there was a little bit about aggression, which I'm going to speak with her about separately because that wasn't we're not covering that topic today. But she does say she gravitates to small stones in the garden. She chews them, but she doesn't try to eat them. So yeah, so definitely, Linda, that's not a Pica issue as such in terms of she's not swallowing, she's not ingesting. So she's just putting them in her mouth, chewing them just to explore them, and then spitting them out again. So again, if it's not a problem for you and she's not, it's not dangerous for her, I wouldn't worry about it. Most puppies they'll explore their environment, and once they're done exploring, they won't continue to do it. So it tends to just go away on its own. What tends to make this behaviour continue is actually paying attention to it, making a big deal out of it. So if you're really worried about it, what I would do is when she's chewing stones is just try and get her attention onto something more appropriate. So maybe giving her a chew item that she's allowed to chew, or picking up a toy and just going, oh, what have I got here? What's this? So puppy just goes, oh, playing with these stones is really boring. Ooh, what you've got seems like it's really interesting. I'm going to come over to you and play a game with you instead. So that might be something that's worthwhile trying out. Tabitha says, I have a 5-month-old basset hound who eats dirt, grass cuttings and likes to chew on rocks. Any tips on getting him to stop? We give him chews in the garden, but the only chew he seems to chew for more than a few minutes is a hoof, but he gets bored with that and goes back to rocks after a while. Okay, so the dirt and the grass cuttings, again, we come back to the fact that although it's technically not a food item, there is still some nutritional value in that, in terms of minerals and things like that. So I would always want to just check diet when we're looking at puppies that are eating dirt and grass and things like that, making sure we're on a nutritious diet, we're getting a good nutritious, balanced meal and several meals per day. When we've got a puppy that's chewing on rocks, so you've given him an alternative, the hoof, and it's a good alternative as well because it's a hard, solid thing, but he's going back to the rocks. So again, that's very similar to the question we had earlier. So what is making him want to chew the rocks more than the hoof? And it might be that the attention he gets when he chews on the rocks is better than the attention he gets when he chews on the hoof. So what you might find that you need to do is just spend a little bit more time just really reinforcing the behaviour of chewing on that hoof. So when he's chewing on it, really praising him. That might be, telling him he's a good boy, just really gently saying, good lad, well done. Gentle stroking if he's happy with that as well. But making sure that he's learning that that's a really, really good thing to do. What tends to happen, like I said before, is they chew on a hoof and we just go, oh, they're doing the right thing, we'll just ignore that. And then the moment they go back to the rocks, that's when we go, oh, no, you've got to come away from that and pay a load of attention. So is he learning that chewing on the rocks is getting attention versus the hoof, which is actually very, very boring? So quite a few of you going through the same situation, and all of you, it's young puppies, mostly sort of just in that very early stage up to sort of early adolescence. So it is very, very common. And like I say, the same things crop up again and again and again. So it's a lot of this is about appropriate management, making sure that we haven't got any nutrition issues going on that's causing the behaviour, but appropriate management, making sure we're giving them appropriate things to do and reinforcing them for that, not giving them access to things that we don't want them to have access to, and then teaching a really good leave and a really good drop so that you can just get them to come away from those items if you need to, if you're really worried about it. So hopefully that's been helpful. If anybody's got any other questions, or if any of those people would like to respond, because obviously there's a little bit of guesswork going on there because I haven't got the full story with everybody. So if anybody's got any questions or would like to comment further, please do feel free. With things like teaching the leave and the drop, if anybody wants to have any more information about how to teach those things appropriately, please do get in touch with your local puppy school tutor, and I'm sure they'd be able to help you. I'm happy to help you as well. But other than that, thank you very, very much for your time. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and I look forward to seeing you next week, where I believe we're talking about crate training. So have a good weekend, and we'll see you next week. Bye.